Call the June 5th, 2012 City Council meeting to order. Please rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Francisco.
Here.
Hotchkiss.
Here.
House. Murillo.
Here.
Rouse.
Here.
White. And Mayor Schneider.
Here. Item 1.
Item number 1, Employee Recognition Service Award pins.
Yes, Madam Mayor and members of the council, as you know, every month we recognize employees who are celebrating important anniversaries in the city. And this month we're recognizing several, and I want to read their names into the record, and then we have one employee who's here to receive his pin. So first, with 5 years, Tava Ostringer, who's the Deputy City Attorney in the Attorney's Office. Elva De La Torre, Planning Technician and Community Development. Charlie Katsipis, who's a police officer. Brian Larson, police officer. Mike Little, police officer. Darla Reeder, police officer. Aaron Tudor, police officer. And Tim Downey, who's our Urban Forest Superintendent in Parks and Rec. With 10 years, Joanne LeConte, who's an Assistant Planner in Community Development. Jeff DeForest, police officer. John Bacon, police officer. Lorena Renteria, who's a Public Safety Dispatch Supervisor in the Police Department. And Rick Callahan, who's an Airport Patrol Officer. With 15 years, John Mead, Ground Maintenance Crew Leader in Parks and Rec. And Steve Takaya, who's also in Parks and Rec. He's the Park Supervisor. With 20 years, Lori Peterson, Administrative Analyst in the City Administrator's Office. And with 25 years, we have two employees, Matt Gruel, who will be here next month. He was on vacation this month, who's an Automotive Service Writer in Public Works. And Keith Kapui, who's a Laboratory Analyst Coordinator in the Public Works Department, who's here to receive his pin.
So if Mr. Kapui can come up for his pin. There you are. Keith Kapui started his career with the City of Santa Barbara as a plant operator trainee at the El Estero Wastewater Treatment Plant on June 1st, 1987. Keith has had several positions while at the city, including Plant Operator 1, Laboratory Analyst 1, Laboratory Analyst 2, and his current position of Laboratory Analyst Coordinator. Keith has earned several commendations during his career. In addition, he has completed technical presentations to train laboratory staff at local training workshops. Keith's role in the laboratory is to assign and track the work of the Water Resources Laboratory. Each year, the laboratory completes more than 7,500 water, wastewater, soils, creeks, and ocean quality control samples. Keith ensures that samples are collected and analyzed in a timely manner to ensure the submission of data in compliance with all the required permits. The laboratory accomplishes this work with greater than a 99% accuracy. Keith's passion is writing. He's attended fiction writing classes at the Santa Barbara Writers Conference since 1995, and his other hobbies are bicycling and fishing. Keith is married to Juliette Connor, his partner for the last 13 years, and his other family members include his 3 cats. Keith, it's my pleasure to honor you today for your 25 years of service to the City of Santa Barbara, and on behalf of the City Council, we congratulate you on this admirable achievement. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I very much appreciate this, and my heart's full of gratitude to be able to live and work in this beautiful town. I definitely want to thank my coworkers for all the hard work. I've never been with a better group of all my life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda? Do you want to comment on this item? Yeah, come on up real quickly, and when you're done, if you could fill out a slip to give to the clerk.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. 3 weeks ago, I had occasion to take a B-24 Liberator flight at the airport, and you know, the plane is older than me. It was probably, I'll be 66 in August, and that Liberator was probably 68 to 70 years old. And I talked to the pilot and the co-pilot, and you know, they just exuded confidence. The pilot was a retired Pan Am captain, and the co-pilot was multi-engine rated. The only disconcerting thing was when they were about to take off, the 2 airport crash trucks pulled up. Jason, so beats the U.S. Army. I was just told, get on the plane, soldier. And the flight was great. But thinking back about that and having had the privilege to work with Keith Capuy for 25 years, he exuded that same calm confidence. I had occasion to work with him for 18 months as a plant operator. He was on my shift on crew, and that was probably the hardest shift setup I've ever worked in my life, and I've done a number of very odd shifts, so to speak. It was 3 swings and 2 graveyards finishing it up at the end of the week, so you never felt like you had a day off or time off, the way it rocked your bio clock. Keith never complained. He just rode with it. And then he transitioned into the laboratory where the citizens and ratepayers of the city of Santa Barbara have been very, very well served, because he does an excellent job. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any changes to the agenda? No changes? Thank you. Public comment, I have a few slips here. They're 2 minutes up at the podium. We'll start with Mike Jordan, to be followed by Crucito Cruz.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Council. I'm a day early. Tomorrow morning, you're going to be discussing Measure B guidelines and the use of Measure B monies for a couple of expenses that the city is considering, both at the Andre Clark Bird Refuge and also mitigation settlement monies for the Channel Keeper lawsuit. I just wanted to get in early, because I can't come tomorrow, and voice my concern over playing with the guidelines that have been in force for better than a decade. They are the monies that are generated by the hospitality tax are, right or wrong, seen as pretty proprietary to that group and not to be used as a tax fund to run around to other parts of the general fund. In addition, those guidelines that have been enforced for over 10 years now were initially put together with all the stakeholders in mind. They were put together by the committee, they were put together with the environmental stakeholders, and also with the tourism industry. And if that's truly the issue, if the issue is truly that the guidelines are out of date and need to be revised, then that should be done in a bottom-up manner. That should start down at the committee level, that should involve the stakeholders, and it should come up rather than just a funding decision being made at council. From personal experience, 5 years on that committee, I can tell you one of the most motivational parts of that job was the fact that you had a sequestered amount of money with which you thought you were doing good works with, and you got to play with that from start to end. This kind of derails that experience, and I would also caution you to gaze into that. Thank you.
Thank you. Crucito Cruz.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and City Council. This is my first appearance publicly since my electoral loss, but it doesn't mean that I'm defeated. I'm still persevering in the politics. What's important here today is Election Tuesday. Today is an important date to vote. Why? Because it caused political mobilization, political empowerment, and the political vote individually and collectively. Why voting Tuesday is very important is because sometimes our leadership has double standards in the way they treat our community. Veronica Meadows is catered to. But when a neighborhood advisory committee comes and asks just for a simple light for the resolution of saving lives, there's a deaf ear to this chamber and condescension and a paternal attitude toward what happened. So political leadership is very important on this dais, because I didn't think I sat down and heard all you not give the same respect to the same neighborhoods that we all live under. That double standard is willpower that needs to be changed. Why? If we look at also the community development that's happening with equitable housing, or what is known as affordable housing, we have to put some more leadership behind that. Obviously, we are dormant, we're scared to build. The idea of built out, while we only could build up, but reasonably and equitably. Because affordable housing for a middle income is not the same for a working class or lower income, or someone receiving food stamps. So the thing is, I wish and I hope and I pray that community development and housing for our populace stock is done and committed. And that's why voting is important. Para las personas que están escuchando allá en Santa Bárbara, por favor voten. Es muy importante a movilizar el voto, a dar el poder del voto y al mismo tiempo votar personalmente para cambiar el sistema político. I greatly appreciate your time. Everybody go vote. It's important. This is something that we should always fight for. Gracias.
Thank you. I have no more speaker slips, so that concludes public comment. Move on to the consent calendar. There are no items to read on the consent calendar. Does anyone need to remove any? If we can, if you could read item number 6.
Item number 6, license agreement for use of the unused portion of Chapala Street for temporary valet parking.
Okay, Mr. Hotchkiss, you had a question on this one?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I just wanted to point out to the public, particularly folks that live in the area of the Chapala Street that's going to be used for temporary valet parking, that this is going to be carefully controlled. Down there, there has been problems with transient RVing, if I can put it that way, and sort of abuse of overnight parking. And I want them to be assured that this lot will not be subject to that. It'll be locked up at night, and there'll be also towing signs, I understand, there. So it won't attract bad elements. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other items on the consent calendar? Or is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Okay, I hear moved and a seconded by
second.
Maria. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes on to the Finance Committee. Mr. Francisco.
Madam Mayor, the Finance Committee met today very briefly and recommended to the full council that we approve a loan modification for the Bradley Studios affordable housing project.
And that will be coming to us at a
Yes.
future meeting. Great. Okay, item number 9.
Item number 9, 2012 legislative platform.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if Mr. Armstrong, you want to start? I think we got through everything pretty quickly.
Yeah.
If Ms. Johnson's on her way over.
Yes, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council, before you is the proposed legislative platform for this year, and just a little background on the platform. We started doing this 6 or 7 years ago, prior to having a legislative platform. Every time we used to write a letter to any state legislator or were asked to take a position by the League of Cities, we used to put the letter on the City Council agenda and do a council agenda report. And so part of the purpose of this was to create a more efficient way to communicate our views to the legislature, and also because legislation can happen very quickly, bills can come out of nowhere. This allowed us to be timely if we already knew what the council's position was. And so as a part of this, having this program, the council created a legislative committee that then reviews the platform, and they've vetted this today. And Ms. Johnson staffs that committee, and she's going to go through kind of what they've come up with.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. My name is Nina Johnson. I'm the assistant to the city administrator. I coordinate our city's legislative program, and before you today is our draft legislative platform. So today, what I wanted to cover was the purpose of our legislative platform and how it's used, discuss the city's legislative process, and then also highlight some of the significant changes in the platform. I won't be going through each of the changes, each of the revisions in the platform, but we will have time to answer questions as council may have. In terms of the overall legislative platform, the purpose of the platform is to summarize council's positions on a variety of state and federal issues. Each year, we bring the platform to council. We update it to make sure that it's current and it reflects our current legislative issues. The platform authorizes the mayor to take action on behalf of the city, so we want to make sure it's current and comprehensive. The platform enables the city to act quickly. If we didn't have the platform, we would be bringing individual bills back to council for individual votes. So basically, the platform is saving us some time so that we can move quickly to advocate for a specific issue. Over the years, the platform has probably evolved quite a bit, but primarily it's based on the League's guiding principles, the language in those principles. That's the League of California Cities, for someone who is not familiar with the League. Each year, staff reviews the platform and recommends revisions to the platform. The legislative committee, a committee of council members, reviews it and then forwards those recommendations to council for review. Overall, the goal for the platform is to be comprehensive and then also very current, reflecting our current legislative environment. In terms of our advocacy efforts, we receive requests from a number of sources. Council might have an interest in a specific issue, so they forward a request for us to take a position on a specific bill. Staff also is a part of a lot of different professional associations, and we receive information and bulletins that really pinpoint specific issues that affect our city operations or our financial condition, so we want to take an issue on those bills. I should point out here that the city doesn't have an aggressive legislative program. We don't have staff that monitors all pending legislation that could possibly impact the city, but we tend to focus just on significant legislation that could impact our operations or our finances. In terms of some other sources, we get a lot of recommendations from the League of California Cities. They point out a lot of our high priority bills that affect cities throughout California. And then we also get a lot of requests to support or oppose legislation from community organizations. However the bill may get to us, however that issue comes up, the issue has to be consistent with our platform in order for the mayor to send a letter of support or opposition. And if it's not consistent with the platform, we return to council for direction. We have a council committee on legislation that I mentioned, and that committee consists of Councilmember House, Francisco, and White. That committee reviews the platform revisions, makes suggestions, suggests language, and then makes recommendations to council from there. Moving to the platform itself, on the screen we have a list of all of the different policy areas that are covered in the platform, so I'll just quickly read through them. City administration, revenue and taxation, employee relations and risk management, public safety, transportation, public works and communications, housing, community and economic development, environmental quality. We have 2 sections for our enterprise operations, airport and waterfront, and community services. There are some common themes that run throughout the legislative platform. Last year, we actually took out a lot of the mentions that were in many different sections throughout the document. And instead, on page 1, at the top of page 1, we included language, and I've included that excerpt right here on the screen. We included language for these themes: local control, local authority, discretion. We want to support the ability of cities to enact local, implement local standards, local regulations that are different from state or federal regulations. And then likewise, we oppose legislation or regulations that preempt our local authority. Also, along those lines, we've got language for funding for state or federal mandates. We support funding for mandated improvements, projects, programs. We support funding for those state or federally mandated projects. And then probably what we see more often is opposing projects, opposing mandated projects where we don't receive funding to implement them. I mentioned last year we made quite a few revisions. Last year we did a thorough review of the platform, and we tried to take out as much of the language that was outdated as we could. We moved around a lot of the sections. We tried to move the platform around so that it's easier to find specific issues. We reduced the length of the document. This year we continued that work, and primarily the focus of our updates was just looking at current legislative efforts. So what you'll see is really adding language for new proposals. For example, there are a number of examples, but I'll just bring out some language that we've added in the Employee Relations and Risk Management section. There's a current state bill that would shift the liability for an employee accident in a personal vehicle when driven for work purposes to the city. So instead of moving the liability from the employee to the city for an accident in their personal vehicle. So we've added language along those lines for that proposal specifically, and written letters along those lines. We've deleted obsolete language. In most cases, I think we've been successful in some of those areas that maybe we supported something and it was adopted. So we no longer need that language. For example, we supported Councilmember Hotchkiss had talked about the our nationwide interoperable broadband network for emergency responders. We had language along those lines for a number of years, and then that passed earlier this year. So we don't need that language in the platform anymore. A lot of the language is from the League's guiding principles, so staff has reviewed the most current version of the principles that was released earlier this year to make sure our platform was consistent. Probably one of the best examples, we've added some language to support some of the pension reform strategies that were contained in the League's guiding principles. So we added that to our existing language. We also added some new language along the lines of helping immigrants safely report crimes and cooperate with law enforcement without fear of deportation. And this was a proposed language from Councilmember House. A significant area in our revisions, we added new language that looked at the dissolution of redevelopment agencies. So we support language to clean up and clarify the process to dissolve redevelopment agencies. We support legislation to enhance, to expand tools to address redevelopment needs related to blight, economic development, and affordable housing. Those are some of the most significant changes. The Legislative Committee met twice in May and forwarded the platform for Council for approval. So that's the platform that's before you today. That concludes my presentation. We have a number of staff here in case there are questions from Council.
Thank you. We also have a public comment speaker slip. Do you have any questions first, or why don't we go to public comment? You have 2 minutes at the podium there. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Murillo, you had a question. Go right ahead.
I did. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson, I missed, you said you put in language about pension reform, and did that come from a member of the Legislative Committee, or was that, who proposed those, please?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Murillo, what staff does is we take a look at the League's guiding principles and also go through different information that we've been receiving throughout the year on upcoming proposals. So staff, Christy Schmidt, who might be here today, she went through in her review of the employee relations section, and the League had made quite a few changes to that particular section, included a lot of different pension reform strategies. So we decided to include those for the Legislative Committee's review, and that's what we have here today.
Okay. I had a specific question. There's a couple of new proposed sections related to the Fair Employment and Housing Commission. So I also want to know, I just wanted to, why is someone proposing to oppose the expansion, to oppose extending the filing dates for Fair Employment and Housing Commission charges and oppose permitting the Commission to provide affirmative or prospective relief to prevent the recurrence of an unlawful practice.
Yeah, what page is
Am I
that?
getting too deep into
No,
it?
no, that's exactly page 6. Thank you.
Page 6, and it's up at the
Top of
top
the
under
page.
sexual orientation.
Yep. Ms. Schmidt?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Murillo. I believe both of those sections are just being moved. They've been in the legislative platform for some time. You'll see on page 6 the opposing the filing deadlines and preventing affirmative relief. If you look at page 8, you can see that there's a cross out of the same provision. So that's just moving an existing provision to a different spot on the platform, and that is consistent with the position that the League has taken on that issue.
So there's a filing date when someone has they feel like they've been discriminated against in terms of sexual orientation, and so the League is saying that we should not extend the filing dates.
There have been attempts to pass legislation that would double the time that a former employee or a former employee has to file a claim with the Fair Employment and Housing Commission to be more like the limitation for the federal law, the EEOC. And so this is just supporting keeping the deadline existing law for the state.
Just to be clear, it's not just about sexual orientation. You're looking at all the different parts of equal opportunity. Yeah, it's just the page. There was a page break.
Okay.
Okay, just so you're clear there. Other questions, or why don't we go to public comment then? Filiberto Nolasco. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hello, City Council. This is my first time going to a meeting. My name is Filiberto Nolasco, and I apologize for wearing sunglasses, but I couldn't find my regular prescription glasses, so I had to use my prescription sunglasses. My mom would be very upset with me for being so rude. So sorry about that. I represent the UAW Local 2865, so the union for TAs at the UC. There's 4,000 TAs or grad students that we represent collectively in bargaining and in enforcing our contract, and we've taken specific positions on parts of the legislative platform, in particular the piece that reads remove barriers and builds trust between law enforcement agencies and the immigrant community. While many of our members are not immigrants, we do feel that we're part of the community and we support rights of immigrants. In particular, we feel strongly that because of secure communities and other pieces of federal legislation, there's a distrust among immigrant communities. They feel uncomfortable reporting rape, reporting crimes because there's fear of deportation. So potentially this piece of, potentially the City Council could support a piece of legislation such as the Trust Act that would allow cities and counties to I can't remember the language. It was to opt out of secure communities and therefore build that trust. We also have strong feelings about affordable housing and renters' rights in the city, and we also would appreciate and support efforts to do so. I think in particular the message that we want to bring as a group of advocates at the UC is that we're more than happy to work with the City Council on these two particular issues and whatever else would make sense in advocating for and bringing whatever resources that we have available as a statewide organization to support both pieces. Thank you.
Thank you. It's the only public comment speaker slip I have, so I'll close public comment on this. It's to the council. Mr. Hotchkiss?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first thing that Ms. Johnson read was support the ability of local governments to enact.
Could you tell us what page you're on?
Oh, I'm
as you're
sorry,
going
page
through?
1.
Thank you.
Support the top here. Support the ability of local governments to enact local standards or regulations that differ from those enacted at the state and federal level regarding any issue described in the legislative platform, et cetera. So what we're really talking about is local control there, right? Right.
That's correct.
So then on page 17, we say towards the bottom, we would oppose legislation that would allow local jurisdictions to prohibit, et cetera, which is directly contradictory to what we've said as a sort of blanket that should apply to all of the platforms. So my suggestion is that that's just be removed because it's not consistent with what we've said at the top. Mr. White just asked where on 17, and I'm hunting here. midway. There you go. Okay.
That your,
Well, that's it for that. Do we want to talk about that first, or should we go on?
do you have a number of questions?
I only
or
have one other.
Why don't you just go through all of them,
Okay.
and then we can all discuss
Okay,
all of them.
on the part that the gentleman just talked about, and that Mr. Howes put in on page 10, support legislation that removes barriers and builds trust between law enforcement agencies and the immigrant community to ensure that vulnerable individuals can safely report crimes and fully cooperate with local police and sheriff departments. Well, certainly we want people to cooperate with the police. We want not just immigrant communities, but everybody to do that. But this seems to me a little overbroad, because there could be down the line somebody that proposes that no immigrant ever be deported for any reason. I'm not saying that's likely, but and that we would be committed to supporting that even if we in fact didn't want to. So I wonder if this language could either be tightened up or removed. The other point here is that it is a federal matter, and it's actually before the Supreme Court, being written on in the Supreme Court now. So I wonder if we even want to get into this area. But I asked the chief of police if we do have a problem about trust of the immigrant community locally, and he said no. But unless somebody's a criminal and they don't cooperate, then we take them out to the jail and they get fingerprinted, and instead of not knowing who they are, we know who they are, and if they are a felon and are here illegally, then they are turned over to the federal authorities. So I'm just suggesting that I think we need to work a little bit on this, and I have suggested language if people want to hear it, or I look forward to their comments.
Thank you. Mr. House, you're chair of the committee. I probably should have started with you if you had any comments or questions.
Well, then let me just start by saying I appreciate Mr. White and Mr. Francisco, who are on the committee, and the hard work that they did, and the staff that stepped up to really help us with each one of these, and they took time out from their very busy days to come and really help us answer lots of questions, like the chief of police who came over and helped us with the questions we had about that particular one that Mr. Hotchkiss is talking about. And so it was really it seemed like a very productive working environment, and we covered a lot of ground. And so I just wanted to start with that. Just since this is these two things that Mr. Hotchkiss just mentioned, I think I'll just take them on right away, and we'll see where the conversation goes. On page 17, the one that says oppose legislation that would allow local jurisdictions to prohibit large family daycare on single-family zoned property. Staff, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're talking about 7 to 14 inhabitants, perhaps, of a home, which in the is that the correct number? Yes. 8 to
14.
Thank you, 8 to 14. That's what the word large means. But it's the way we have always treated that, and homes like that these are families basically. These are we don't make a distinction between the whether they're friends or people renting the house together or whatever it might be, but it's basically a family. And what really trumps the local jurisdiction's role in this is federal civil rights. These are civil rights that people have to choose to live where they want to be, and people who are, say, recovering, or there may be daycare centers, things like that. This is a place for them to be able to live in a single-family neighborhood and not have local jurisdictions step in and say no. And that's where the abuse happens. We can easily see how communities might be concerned about this and abridge people's civil rights. And so we want to make sure it's clear that the City of Santa Barbara does not get in the business of abridging people's civil rights. So this is a very, very important piece. Maybe Mr. Casey has more to say.
Yeah, Madam Mayor and council members. And I think some of the discussion at the Legislative Committee had to do with child care facilities, kind of the large child care facilities. And Mr. Hotchkiss, I think the committee struggled a little bit with it because of the conflicting policy level. And on the policy of supporting that legislation would be the housing element and a lot of child care policies that the council has adopted over the years to support child care. And I think the concern was with proposed legislation that would allow jurisdictions to prohibit, not to regulate, to prohibit. And the concern that then if all the neighboring jurisdictions prohibit it, then you create a concentration within the city of Santa Barbara, for instance, to be the sole provider of large child care facilities on the South Coast, just as an example. The city itself does regulate the larger child care facilities, and so it does have public noticing process. It requires a performance standard permit. It goes before the staff hearing officer, and so I don't think we're opposed to regulation of these facilities. It was the concern about just the outright prohibition that the committee went with.
Madam Mayor, I appreciate Paul saying that, because the key here is if it were that different adjoining jurisdictions were to prohibit, it really then falls on the city of Santa Barbara, which has been very generous, generally speaking, and we have daycare centers like that throughout the whole community. But then it really concentrates that as opposed to distributing these on a regional basis. And so there is a nexus for the city, and it's really important that we call this out, because otherwise, as you say, that initial language at the very beginning would hold sway here, and that would not be appropriate. That wouldn't be in the city's interest. And I have more to say on the other item as well, so maybe I'll just take care of that real quick. Going back to the item on page 10. One of the things that we learned in speaking with the chief of police and having our discussion was that the city of Santa Barbara already does what's here. As you mentioned, the city of Santa Barbara is very, very careful to ensure that there's a trusting relationship between the constituents here, and our constituents in Santa Barbara and the police department, and does not pretend to be immigration service of any sort. I mean, it really deals directly with our local citizens and non-citizens alike, and doesn't distinguish or discriminate in any way, shape, or form. Unfortunately, even though the federal legislation is really intended to focus on, I think it's called Secure Communities, is really intended to focus on the felons, as you mentioned, the really bad guys. What has actually happened is you have people in the city of Santa Barbara who very well wouldn't report a domestic abuse incident, for instance, or even speak up, maybe even to report their child being bullied on the way to school, or things like this, out of the fear that any one of these contacts with the police might result in a contact with the sheriff. And at the sheriff's level, there is a problem at that point, because somebody could very well end up in the system, and there's not a really good solution yet for this. So I think that we didn't get very specific, because we don't have a solution necessarily in mind, but anything that will really encourage our local members of our local community, whether they're immigrants or other people, to cooperate with the police and to report crimes when they happen. We want to really make sure that that climate is safe and excellent to do that. So I don't think we're proposing a particular solution here, but just trying to keep to the principle that our city abides by now, and our police department here in the city does as well.
Ms. Maria.
Thank you. And for the sake of continuity, I'll talk about that first, the supporting legislation that helps the immigrant community feel comfortable talking to law enforcement. But Ms. Schmidt, don't go away, because I have a question on something that relates to your expertise. And with all due respect to the chief's perspective, I can tell you that there are members of the immigrant community who will not call the police when there's domestic problems, women have been sexually assaulted, and there are deportations that take place in the city of Santa Barbara County, and the state of California. And people are afraid of talking to police, talking to government in general. I had a meeting yesterday with the representatives from the Coast Coalition for Alternative Sustainable Transportation, and they help people, mothers who walk their kids to school, identify dangerous intersections when they walk their kids to school. And those moms don't even want to come to the transportation committee to talk about public safety and crossing the street, because they're afraid of having any contact with the government, with government officials, because if they get their name, they're going to look them up. Okay, they don't have papers. So there is a real fear. So I do support this in here for that reason. I was talking to Andrea Bufano the other day with the Rental Housing Mediation Task Force, and she was talking about a family got evicted, and the grandfather got upset, got drunk, got caught drunk driving, and they're deporting him. Well, okay, so when people commit crimes, that's a whole different subject. But first of all, people are being deported, and then, but what this is talking about is people who aren't committing dangerous crimes, right? So people are getting caught in the net and being deported, and so it's a complex issue. I think we should take it on because we have a lot of residents who are here and they're undocumented. And they come here and we give them jobs and they're part of our community. So we can't pretend like they aren't here and that they're a vulnerable population that needs protection. So that's my bit on that particular law enforcement public safety one. For Ms. Schmidt on page 5, under labor relations, and this must have come from the League of Cities now that I look at it, oppose the expansion of a local agency's collective bargaining responsibilities to employees over whose conditions of employment in the local agency does not have full control. So what's the impetus for that, please?
There has been a movement to put out some legislation that would expand the coverage of the Myers-Milius-Brown Act to employees not of a public agency, but employees of a private employer where the covered agency, the city or the county, co-determines or has the ability to co-determine working conditions to some extent. And so it would be expanding the Myers-Milius-Brown Act that's meant to cover public employees to employees of a non-public agency. And so that this is just an effort to keep the MMBA to its intended scope.
Well, does the city of Santa Barbara somehow ever have, are we ever in a place where we're trying to have control over somebody's working conditions not entirely in our control? It sounds like legalese here. I'm like, what? I mean, does this affect us?
I believe that the specific issue is there is a specific case where it's employees of a nonprofit agency that a county is helping to co-sponsor the employment of a person who working at the agency and to expand the bargaining rights to employees of that nonprofit agency. So that's the specific situation. I'm not aware, because it wouldn't go through me as a labor person, of any situations we have that are like that, but I can't say they don't exist.
Okay, that's all I have for now.
Mr. Hotchkiss?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's go back to page 17. How Mr. House gets civil rights out of this, I'll be darned if I can figure out. But because we're talking about a large family daycare on a single family's own property, which is a business. If you have up to 14 kids, that means in excess of 50 car trips a day in that location. It means noise all day long. It's a significant impact on a community, and in fact, we recognize that and make special arrangements for it. If that's going to happen, we have to approve it, and we may not. So that we're giving ourselves that discretion, but here we would not give other communities that same discretion. That seems to me not a good idea. That whereas if we say, well, we want to be sure that what applies to us applies to others around us, I mean, you could virtually stop making any laws that way. Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, if you want me to answer. I think the key was on the word prohibit. We're not saying that other jurisdictions shouldn't have the ability to regulate, because I agree with you, we regulate. But the concern was just the outright prohibition in other jurisdictions that I think was what we were trying to capture with that phrase.
So maybe a better way to say this would be in a positive, which would be allow local jurisdictions to regulate large family daycare on a single family's own property. That to me makes more sense if the rest of you agree. Secondly, to go back to page 10. Again, this is such a big blanket. It doesn't cover things like, it would in fact this encourage a felon to call the cops, because then he would be protected from deportation because he worked with the police. There's just so many holes in this that I think it needs much closer examination, and I wonder if we are able to do this with a broad blanket, or down the line if there are specific things that a member or two would like to bring before the council, they can do so. This just seems to me too big. I appreciate anybody else's comments.
Mr. Rouse?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, to follow up on that page 10 issue, yeah, I agree in concept you want to remove all those barriers and have as much cooperation throughout the column of society as possible. I get a little nervous when California tries to get into constitutional issues and make legislation to protect civil rights, which is a federal issue. So I don't have a big problem with this since it's just a ledge platform, but I see those points as we don't legislate well in California. And speaking of overreaching, I want to go to page 21. And this is slide 12, speaks briefly about the cleanup language of clarifications for the dissolution of the RDA. And why I wanted to talk about this specifically was because it's time is kind of the essence. And I don't know, and I'll have to defer to Mr. Wiley, if it's appropriate at this time to bring up the issue of the parking structures because it is a timely issue. I don't know if it's something I should try to agendize for a future issue, or if we can talk about it.
We sent letters last week on that particular issue, so it fit within our legislative platform on opposing the sale of parking garages based on the dissolution of RDA. So,
but if I wanted to move further and propose authorization for city administrator to move forward on cooperation with other agencies, is that
it's already already there. That's all part of our.
You did it without me?
We just. We're doing everything you want, Mr. Rouse, I think, on that one. But I think just to be, because all the issues related to RDA and protecting the local funds and our assets and so forth have already been in the platform, and we've advocated for it a number of times, including, opposing the elimination of the redevelopment agency, supporting Prop 22, all the things related to funding. That's what you're talking about is an extension of that.
That's what I was talking about. There was specific authorization without limitation to go forward on action if we needed to in a timely manner.
Right, and I don't think we need to do anything different to the ledge platform to do what you're suggesting. I think we already have everything in place, unless Mr. Armstrong or Mr. Casey, you think otherwise.
No, I think that we have sufficient authority, and to tell you the truth, because it's such an important issue, we would probably use a little administrative discretion if necessary.
Yeah. Okay. Other questions on Mr. Rouse? I'll just add about civil rights stuff. It's certainly a state issue as well as a federal issue. I would hate to just have to deal with civil rights and just do with the U.S. government, not California. I mean, there's loads of civil rights legislation that happens on the state level that is appropriate, and it happens in states all over the country. So sometimes it needs consolidation on a federal level, but so that was just a comment I heard earlier about civil rights. I'm looking at the daycare one exactly the way Mr. Casey was describing it. It's not about whether or not how a community or how a city should regulate its zoning requirements related to a large daycare center. It's just not creating a patchwork of different rules of prohibiting something to the effect that then those that do allow large family daycare centers to maybe be overburdened in some way. We've heard that with other pieces of zoning issues that not necessarily related to daycare, but this would be another one. You need some consistency, I think, statewide, while still giving local control to cities to regulate in their zoning process how they manage that within their system. So I'm okay with the language the way it's written there, because it doesn't. It already says. I mean, there's no reason. Cities already, through their zoning process, have the ability to regulate under zoning anyway. There's no need to emphasize something that already exists. This is saying that there's been legislation to try to prohibit something, and we're saying we don't want that to happen. So that's the way I read that language. Other questions or Mr. White?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I'll just make a comment to contribute to the discussion on the large what do they call daycare, but not just daycare though. They are also other kinds of special care facilities, and that is, I think about the homeless shelter discussion that goes on statewide, where what the state has done has required places to allow homeless shelters with no discretionary review whatsoever. And I would think that that would be the kind of thing that Mr. Hotchkiss would have obviously have a bigger concern about. But here, we don't want to end up with more than our fair share. And so we want places like the city of Goleta, like Nolita, like Carpinteria, to have the opportunity, to be required to at least listen to the arguments and of course regulate these facilities. There's just the forces will. We have an inventory of houses here that are eligible for this, and we want others to share in that responsibility. So I continue to think that this is reasonable, and I know that this city does a good job of regulating. So I support the language as it stands.
Okay, Mr. Hotchkiss.
Thank you. I appreciate your arguments and your discussion back and forth. I see your point. I'm not entirely in agreement with it, but I'm not entirely in disagreement with it either. On the page 10 issue about trust with police, I would like to broaden it because I don't think that Mr. Hauser or anybody wants anything but the same kind of trust between all communities and the police. So I just throw out this and see what you think. That it would read, support legislation that does not contradict state or federal law, because I think we have to be consistent, and builds trust between law enforcement agencies and the communities they serve, that's everybody, to encourage people to report crimes and fully cooperate with local police and sheriff departments. So I'm just broadening your language a little bit, because I don't think you mean it to be exclusive at all. Tell me what you think, everybody.
Mr. White?
Well, I think that and I don't have a problem with the concept. Clearly, the issue is around. I mean, what we're hearing about at the Legislative Committee is, for example, domestic violence. That's an area where people are afraid to step forward. And I think to be able to say all communities, including the immigrant community, then that would at least highlight the area of greatest concern, but it would also broaden the language to include everybody.
In total agreement.
So then the suggestion would be to keep the language as is, but add trust between law enforcement agencies and all communities, including the immigrant community, to ensure that vulnerable blah, 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 blah.
And I'm
So to be
consistent
broader-
with state and federal laws, another point that Mr. Hotchkiss was raising, and I don't see how that hurts the discussion.
Okay. Okay. Because I think it's important to highlight the immigrant community, because that was the point of putting it in there. So,
Should I read this again so that, because people haven't had a chance to hear it before?
Sure, say it again.
Support legislation that does not, as you say, or is consistent with state and federal law and builds trust between law enforcement agencies and the communities they serve, including the illegal immigrant or the
Doesn't have to be illegal.
the immigrant community, to encourage them to report crimes and fully cooperate with local police and sheriff departments.
Okay. Mr. House, your light's on?
Definitely appreciate the discussion, and I appreciate the interest that's being represented. One of the things, the legislation that might be supported would be refinements or improvements to state or federal legislation that could affect this. I mean, that's really where the action will be. It won't be here in Santa Barbara because, I mean, I don't think so. It'll be, this is about legislation that would be at the state or federal level. And so when you say consistent with, I mean, the idea is that it would be legislation that could actually improve those laws or remove barriers. So I think that that's a little bit of a problem there. Otherwise, the fact that you broadened it is fine with me.
So you'd be okay with the statement without the phrase consistent with state and or federal
Yeah, it's not to be inconsistent. It's that the reason for legislation is to make the improvements that might be necessary, and I don't think we can predict what those would be at this point. We just want to make it safer for people to cooperate with the police.
So your point being, if we said consistent with state or federal law and all this stuff, then why would we send a letter about any bill? Because that wouldn't be consistent with state or federal law because they're trying to change the law, right?
I understand your point. So we could take that phrase out and add the other ones. So may I read it once again?
Sure. Please.
All together now. Support legislation that builds trust between law enforcement agencies and the communities they serve, including the immigrant community, to encourage people to report crimes and fully cooperate with local police and sheriff's departments.
Mr. House?
Sure. I mean, you've removed the words "remove barriers." That's not so important. It's the building trust between law enforcement agencies and the community, including the immigrant community. I get that. I support that, and I don't know how the others feel, but
Okay.
I do.
I don't see any other lights on. I mean, if there's a motion, you want to include that new language in there for the ledge platform, unless there are other questions on the ledge platform. Ms. Murillo?
Thank you. I do support that change regarding that one. Thank you, Mr. Hotchkiss. I want to weigh in on the large daycare facility. I agree with the mayor, page 17. I support the language as it is. Oppose legislation that would allow local jurisdictions to prohibit large family daycare on single-family zone property. And then I wanted to introduce a new idea, please, on page 6, related to the long list of changes related to the public employees retirement system, that I think this would make a great public hearing on its own to look at these issues. There's a lot here. And we had a meeting at the Chase Palm Park. It was all about specifically pension reform. Those of us who were on the campaign trail last year, every forum asked about what we thought about pension reform. So it's not like I haven't been thinking about it, but I would love to have a hearing. I would appreciate a hearing where the public could come, where pro-labor people could come, where the pension reform people could come. Even Lanny Ebenstein could come, and we hope he would come with facts, and let's have it out. And so that the community really could, no, I think he insults our employees and our administration sometimes, and I'll tell him that to his face. So we need all of the opinions here and to really hash it out. Look at, this is serious stuff here, page 6. Some of you in the audience don't have it in front of you, but how to calculate benefits, increasing the retirement age, that's huge. I see public employees out there right now, right? That's huge to you guys. So I would propose a public hearing just on this. And so that we could have people weigh in. And let me say that we did not have a public hearing on the gang injunction, and I hear from my constituents all the time, why didn't you just have a public hearing so we could talk about it? So this would be one of those areas that I would like to throw some sunshine on and get it out there and have us deliberate in public about these, not just put it into the legislative platform. And as much as I respect the League of Cities, I can sensing here that I don't agree with them on everything. And darn it, it's my job to make sure that all of this gets vetted.
So you're suggesting to table that section of the ledge platform until after a public hearing on the topic? Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yes, ma'am, because then even if you go to page 7, there's stuff about changing the membership on the CalPERS board, you know. Why? What's wrong with the current configuration? All of that needs to be talked about. And so, yes, and so that's your
suggestion.
Should I move something? No.
Well, why don't we hear?
Talk about it.
You
Okay.
can, Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I certainly agree with Ms. Murillo about how this is one of the hottest topics that is out there with in terms of the citizen engagement with our city, and obviously as we struggle with budgets, it's also a very prevalent issue. And that was the intent of the workshop that was held however many months ago, and I thought it was one more helpful step in that direction. It brought a bunch of information together. There are not easy solutions to this. I think that both can occur. I think that this can go forward. I think this is one step. It can change, and that more public, again, with that, as with that session, it's a little bit like finance committee meetings where we have all this amazing stuff happening, and in the room are 4 staff members and ourselves, and it doesn't gather a whole lot of public excitement. And we had a little bit of that. We had more engagement at that workshop, and there's more that's needed. This is going to be something we're going to be struggling with 6 months in and 6 months out indefinitely. So I certainly support all efforts to gain more sunshine, but at the same time, I think this is a reasonable step to take now for the short term, and and it can be changed in the future.
So you're a yes and. Is that what it, okay. Other comments? A motion? Questions?
Well, why don't you go ahead?
Mr. Wright, did you want to?
Committee chair there.
Okay. Sure.
No, Madam Mayor, I actually just wanted to make a comment to something Ms. Maria was just talking about, and I think there's, I think I would agree with her in this, and maybe Mr. White as well. I'm not sure, but this, that this is a really important topic, and we need to find a appropriate venue to hear from the public at large. And maybe I just want to ask staff about that. What could you help us a little bit here? This is an issue that keeps coming up, and there's a lot of moving parts to it. A lot of suggestions here which are consistent with League of Cities, but also kind of the direction things are going. But what would be an appropriate venue for us to have a dialogue about this, not just in closed session when we're necessarily negotiating with one particular bargaining unit or another, but to really look at it in its whole? Because I know at that meeting that we had that you're talking about, Ms. Murillo, I remember hearing at least one of the representatives from labor saying, there's more to this than meets the eye. We'd love to have a chance to contribute. And I think there would be some benefit to that. Even if this stays in the legislative platform, it'd be good for us to have a conversation like that.
I mean, there's the full range. First, just in background, the League of Cities had a task force that worked on pension reform probably for about a year and a half. And so what you see here was the result of what they felt was a reasonable kind of accommodation of modifying the laws. If the council wanted to, but obviously the governor has a proposal right now that doesn't seem to be going any place. Some of these small parts of this are probably going to be enacted. The purchase of airtime, I think, is one that's probably going to be enacted. The council could do, some communities have had blue ribbon committees that have reviewed this and made recommendations to their city council. A simple way would be to break this off and put it on a future agenda where you just deal with the league's recommended platform, and so you would schedule it as a separate item. The people, folks could come in. I think at the workshop we kind of went through the ABCs of how PERS works, and we talked specifically at that time also about these proposals. We went through them at that time. One of the amazing things about pensions is even though there's a cost, there's a very high cost, it's hard to get the general public interested in this. It tends to be folks who have a specific interest on one side or the other, and then most, as much as it's a big cost for us, it's hard to get a lot of citizens involved. But if you wanted to have a vetting, probably the simplest way would just be, have a meeting or have this as a scheduled agenda item and we talk about it individually.
Okay, I think maybe at least a couple of us will discuss bringing that forward. I just want to be reassuring. The Legislative Committee is a standing committee. We can meet during the year at any time. It's not just once a year. And if the council were to take this up at some point and want to give us some direction to relook at this, we certainly could do that. And so that having been said, if it's all right, Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the legislative platform, including the changes that we discussed on the item on page 10 just a few moments ago.
Okay. Your light's on, Mr. House. You're done. Okay, Ms. Murillo.
So if I don't want to vote for what's on page 6 here related to PERS, then I say no to the whole thing? If someone could help me.
Yeah.
If you wanted, we can take that item separately. If you want to change the motion, you could do that. That's up to the maker of the motion. But that's what you would like to do? If that's...
Yeah, I'm standing my ground. I don't want to vote for that today without hearing from more of the public. And it's election day, and people weren't focused on this, and they're not here to, we didn't publicize it as something that we're going to talk about this important subject. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Please change the motion.
Mr. White, your light's on.
Well, I'm agreeable to doing that just to accommodate Ms. Murillo, but obviously maybe the motion needs to be agreed upon as
Okay.
well.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
And I appreciate the request, and this way it'd be a chance, Ms. Murillo, for you to have a clear stand on this particular item, but maybe embrace the rest of the platform. For the moment, I'll move that we support the item, the Public Employees Retirement System section of the legislative platform.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion on that item? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay.
And Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the rest of the legislative platform as it's presented to us with the changes we made to the item on page 10.
There's a second.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. That was a good discussion. Before we end this item, though, I do think I did hear consensus that we do want some form of public discussion about these items. So even though it's in the platform, it's still worth having a public discussion. And so we can work with you offline about how exactly that should be structured. But
And just so I'm clear, then what I think I'm hearing is that you would like to basically bring the league's proposed changes to the PERS systems back as a separate item for discussion and possibly either modify the position that was taken today or reaffirm it.
yeah, and I think the public hearing may not be an action item type of public hearing, but it could be what it is, as a public hearing, and then if we want to give direction to come back to modify what we've done here, we can do so at that time.
Okay.
Okay?
It'd be great. The legislative committee then would have something, if you wanted us to, we could work on that as well.
Right, but I think that will address what Ms. Maria was trying to accomplish, which I think it still does. And if we wanted to, if there are four of us that want to change what's in here now, we can certainly do that at any time. Okay. Thank you. All right, that concludes that item. Move on to item number 10.
Item number 10, introduction of ordinance for supervisors memorandum of understanding, management salary plans, and cancellation of fiscal year 2012 furlough deductions for certain employee groups. Recommendation that council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara adopting the 2012-2013 supervisors MOU, adopting the 2012-2013 management salary plans for unrepresented non-safety managers, including the city administrator and the city attorney, and for certain unrepresented safety managers, and canceling 3 pay periods of fiscal year 2012 furlough deductions for these supervisors and managers and for confidential employees.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council members. I'm Christy Schmidt, the Employee Relations Manager. And negotiators for the city have reached an agreement for a new one-year labor agreement with the Supervisors Association. The Supervisors Association, as you know, has been a very participative partner in trying to address our budget problems over the last 3 years. They've had 3 years of labor agreements that included concessions, including furloughs and giving up other benefits. So this is a one-year labor agreement for this group, and again, they came to the table, they worked cooperatively with us, and we really appreciate that. We're also here to make recommendations with regard to fiscal year 2013 for management compensation, and also to talk about confidential employees and on dealing with their furlough for this year. So for supervisors and managers, I should say supervisors did ratify their MOU yesterday by overwhelmingly, so this has been approved by the membership of the Supervisors Association. The agreement is for 1 year, which is through June 30th of next year, 2013. The salary plans that we're recommending for management are also for 1 year. Both of these plans and MOUs would cancel the last 3 remaining fiscal year 2012 furlough deductions, and that's out of 26 total, in fiscal year 2012, and we offered that as an incentive to reach agreement early so that we could move forward with next year. We're recommending that be applied to supervisors as agreed, but also to managers, and we're also recommending extending that to the city's 39 confidential employees as well. We're also the 40-hour vacation cash out. We're going to do a final cash out of 40 hours for management and supervisors, and discontinue thereafter the vacation cash out program permanently. We've agreed to increase the maximum vacation accrual cap by 40 hours. That doesn't increase the amount of vacation employee is eligible for, just the amount they can accrue before they have to use it. We're agreed with both managers and supervisors to increase the cafeteria plan amount by $116 a month. That will be effective in July for supervisors and January for managers. We've agreed that if the city elects to close during the next holiday period, that employees would need to use their own leave banks or take unpaid leave during that period. We've agreed to reopen on second tier of PERS pension benefits in January 2013, and this coincides with a reopener that we already have with the Treatment and Patrol Bargaining Unit. We've agreed that Harbor Patrol would continue to pay 3% of their PERS for the next year, which they are currently doing. And we also agreed to a Me Too, meaning that if we end up doing more with SEIU Local 620 with our general bargaining unit, that we would reconsider and apply an increase for supervisors, and some miscellaneous changes to workers' compensation, extending the use of some paid leave, and updating the salary survey for next time that we meet. So just some miscellaneous agreements. So the changes to the labor costs are the changes from the existing labor plans. And what you'll see is that while we are increasing labor costs in the short term, in fiscal year 2012, you can see by canceling those furlough deductions, that's going to be about $90,000. In fiscal year 2013, the increased labor cost will be about $81,000. And then on an ongoing basis, though, this does not increase our net labor costs. As a matter of fact, because the value of the manager's cash out is greater than what they are getting as in new benefits, we're actually going to save money in the long term on labor costs through these agreements on a net basis. So the labor cost increases we are looking at are one-time increases, and there is a net decrease. The budget impacts, it's interesting, we're in these agreements, we're swapping what was an unbudgeted labor cost. The vacation cash out has always been a benefit. It was a cost we incurred every year, but we didn't budget for it, for a budgeted cost, which is health contributions. We are going to need to do some budget adjustments. You'll see that for all funds, we've included both the completed negotiations, the ones we're talking about today, and an estimate for the negotiations we have yet to do. We're still talking to the General Bargaining Unit. We're still talking to the Police Management Association, and we are determining what to do with certain fire management employees as well. So, but we put a placeholder in here for the budget impacts of those. They will depend on where we actually end up with negotiations. So you can see the costs for all funds, and then to the general fund, you'll see the fiscal year 2012 cost is $155,000. That's a budget adjustment. $172,000 in fiscal year 2013, and $226,000 on an ongoing basis. So dealing with the budget adjustments, what we're proposing is that for fiscal year 2012, the cost will be absorbed in the existing budget. We can do additional appropriations at the close of the budget if they're necessary, if different departments, we think that most of the departments can absorb that. In fiscal year 2013, vacation cash out costs will not be budgeted as usual. We'll budget for the health costs, and what we're proposing is that we'd use $173,000 approximately of workers' compensation reserves to fund the healthcare costs in the general fund, and that in the enterprise funds there are other sources of funds that are available, and that we would bring that, we would make those adjustments with the budget that you're scheduled to adopt in June. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I see no speaker slips for this. Any questions? All I'd just like to publicly acknowledge this group. They've always come up early. They did the most first in order to set the tone, and I think that really helped in the last several years getting us to where we are, which is not having to cut more. In fact, our budget this year is much better, partly due to the economy, but also partly due to a lot of the teamwork between the city and all the employee groups. And these in particular really stepped up, so I appreciate that, and I'm glad they did it again. So, any other comments, or is there a motion?
I move approval of the staff recommendation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Item number 11.
Item number 11, grants for rental assistance.
Thank you, Mr. Kiefer or Ms. Gray.
Madam Mayor, council members, Sue Gray, Administrative Services Manager and Community Development. And today we come before you to ask you to approve 3 grants for home federal investment partnership program monies for tenant-based rental assistance. Simon Kiefer, our project planner, will be presenting. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and council members. I bring you today a request for grants for 3 proposed rental assistance programs. The 3 grants would total $585,000 and be funded with federal home funds. And I'll discuss each one of the grants separately. The first one would be with a housing authority. This would be for $300,000, and they would operate a Section 8 type of rental assistance. This is where participants would receive a rental subsidy. They would then find their own apartments with assistance from the housing authority, and then they would pay 30% of their income towards rent, and the home funds would be used to pay for the balance of the rent. Home funds would go directly to the landlord. So this is just like Section 8, and the reason for setting up a parallel program is that the demand for the Section 8 program is so great. The Housing Authority operates the Section 8 program with funds from HUD, and it's available to the general public. So the waiting list, though, for the Section 8 program is like 3,000 applicant households. So the waiting time can be 2 years minimum. This is far too long to have a homeless person wait for rental assistance. So the proposed rental assistance that we're talking about here would be designed to work in conjunction with Section 8. And so how it would work is that the homeless person would get on the Section 8 waiting list and then use this rental assistance then during the 2-year waiting period. So right away we're getting people off the street, out of the shelter, and into decent housing and into supportive services. After 2 years, the rental assistance would end, and at that point they'd get Section 8, or better yet, maybe their lives would have stabilized, they'd secure income, and they wouldn't need any further assistance. The second grant would be to Transition House. This would be for $150,000, and this is for homeless prevention. So it's targeted to at-risk households who are in jeopardy of becoming homeless. And the strategy here is to keep these people in their homes and keep them from entering the long cycle of homelessness. And we're going to do this by providing rental assistance, much like the Section 8 program. So participants pay 30% of their income, and the home funds pay the balance. Transition House would be providing ongoing case management, and they would help people stay in their homes. The third grant would be to Casa Esperanza, and this would be for rapid rehousing. So here we're targeting homeless persons who have recently secured a steady stream of income. So this could be like from employment or Social Security benefits, but they just don't have enough money saved up to move into an apartment. This can take maybe 3 to 4 months of waiting. So instead of waiting on the street or in a shelter, we would be giving them then home funds to use as a one-time payment to the landlord so that they could move in immediately. They would then, the home funds would cover a security deposit and a portion of that first month's rent. After that, the participant would be paying full rent on their own with no further assistance. And Casa Esperanza would be providing ongoing case management. So Casa Esperanza and Transition House have been running their respective programs for 3 years now using federal American Recovery and Reinvestment Act money, but unfortunately that money is going away. So these home funds would allow those two organizations to continue this important work. And again, we're talking about home funds. These are federal funds that can only be spent on affordable housing, and we have a commitment deadline. We have to commit $752,000 before June 30th. And the funds requested here, plus the loan that was recently approved for Habitat, would meet that deadline. So Finance Committee met and approved these 3 grants at their May 22nd meeting and recommend that council approve the grants as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hotchkiss?
Regarding those funds for rapid, whatever you called it, for folks that have a job but don't have enough saved up to move into an apartment, and that's so we give them basically security funds to get them into an apartment. Is that right?
Yes, Councilman Hotchkiss, we would be giving them the money that they would need for security deposit and then a portion of that first month's rent.
Okay. When they leave, who gets the money for the security deposit?
Those funds would go back to the tenant.
They go back to the tenant?
Yes.
Okay. Seems to me they ought to go back to the pot so somebody else could use them again. Is that not part of the deal? Do we have control over that?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Hotchkiss, the money is federal money, and what the thought was, and this is also the same for the Homeless Prevention Rapid Rehousing Program, the 3-year grant that we received. The thought is that when a person gets into a home, they get the grant for the security deposit, and then when they move to a new location, they can use that security deposit to carry forward to the new location. If we're to provide it as a loan, we have to track that money separately. And we actually have a grant with the Housing Authority for security deposit loan assistance that theirs is it's an actual loan and it's paid back.
Well,
So
the
we're
advantage,
tracking.
the advantage of doing it that way is we get to use that money over and over and over again. So instead of helping one person, it could help 20. That's why I'm suggesting that, because somebody moves into an apartment, got a job and stuff, they're saving up like crazy, so that, for whatever they can down the line, they are financially stable. So, I'm all for helping them. I just think that we ought to be able to reuse that money. Is it possible to do that? Is that a big burden on you?
It is possible. There is a lot of record keeping involved, but more than that, I think it's the people that we're providing the security deposits to, a lot of them are on SSI, disability, and they're not going to have a lot of money built up, even if they're staying in their units. They're pretty much living.
So these are not people that are ready to actually get into the workforce?
Some would be, but not all of them.
Okay. Well, again, I just go back to using that money again and again and again is better than just using it once.
I don't see any speaker slips on this, so it's to the council for any other comments or a motion. Mr. White?
Well, Madam Mayor, I support the 3 grants and would move approval of the 3 grants: Housing Authority, Transition House, and Casa Esperanza.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, item number 12.
Item number 12, renewal of levy for fiscal year 2013 for the Wildland Fire Suppression Assessment District.
Thank you, and I believe some members have to, if you
Sorry.
can report, I'm sorry, you have to read by title. Do that, and then we'll do that. Go right ahead.
Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara declaring its intention to continue vegetation road clearance, implementation of a defensible space inspection and assistance program, and implementation of a vegetation management program within the foothill and extreme foothill zones, declaring the work to be more than general or ordinary benefit, and describing the district to be assessed to pay the cost and expenses thereof, approving the engineer's report confirming diagram and assessment, and ordering continuation of the Wildland Fire Suppression Assessment District for fiscal year 2012-2013.
Okay, now we have a bunch of abstentions, and you have to leave the room, so those who need to do that, please tell me who you are and why and all that good stuff. Mr. Hotchkiss.
I live in the modified zone area.
Okay. And Mr. White?
As do I.
And Mr. Wiley?
Madam Mayor, yes, I own property in the assessment area, so I'll be not participating.
Okay, so Ms. Connect is here for you, and we'll see you later. You got evacuated last night? No, I'm sorry, you're going to have to stay for that. Yes, I had people come to my house. Everyone was connected somehow or another. Okay, thank you, Mr. Poirier. You can continue. You can start. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, I'm Joe Flores, Santa Barbara City Fire Marshal. With me today is Amber Anderson, our Fire Service Specialist, John Bliss, our Engineer for the Assessment District, and you all know Ann Marks, our Wildland Coordinator. We are here for the renewal of the Wildland Fire Suppression Benefit Assessment District, and this is our 5th year in this program.
Turn your mic on.
Looked like it was on. This is our 5th year in the program, and it's been very successful. This has probably been our most successful year, and it's a good example of the public-private partnership that we've built up with the community, and kudos to the community because they really pitch in and help us out. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Amber Anderson for a short presentation about what we've accomplished this year.
Good afternoon. Well, I'm very excited to be here with you once again to promote and to present this very beneficial program that you all know by now is the Wildland Fire Suppression Assessment District. This program was started in 2006 to fund specific services to reduce those impacts associated with wildfire that threaten our city. And I'm very proud to say as we move into our 6th year, it has done and continues to do just that. And it makes our city's high fire hazard area a very safe place for those homeowners that call that area their home. The assessment district lies within the boundaries of our foothill high fire hazard areas. That is shown on the following map in the 2 darker shades of green. You can see that it does encompass those areas of the foothill and extreme foothill high fire hazard area zones. The services that are provided for the residents within the district there's 4 main services. Those of vegetation road clearance, voluntary defensible space inspections, chipping services, and vegetation management. And I'll briefly describe each one of those projects, some of our accomplishments that we've had this past year, as well as what we have planned for the year ahead of us. The first of those projects that we provide is vegetation road clearance. What we aim to achieve through vegetation road clearance is the successful ingress of first responders and egress of those homeowners that are trying to evacuate our city's foothills in times of emergency utilizing the same roads. We do that by ensuring that the area 10 feet off of the drivable roadway and 13.5 feet in vertical clearance is free from any obstructions, it's void of any fire ladders, and free of most of the dead flammable vegetation that we often see on the side of the roadways. These are some pictures from the roads that we had treated this past year through our vegetation road clearance program. We often encounter a lot of the same continual issues, and we're fortunate enough to be able to treat those through this program. For example, these are several pictures of some overgrown existing canopies that we have throughout the foothill roadways, which do block fire engine access into many of the roadways up in our high fire hazard area. So we are able to get in there with crews and trim branches back and allow engines to access our roadways again. We also have an abundance of overgrown, unmaintained hedges throughout the high fire hazard area that we have been targeting in the last several years through our vegetation road clearance program. When we do large trimming like this, we do make an effort to work with the homeowners to ensure that they understand what we're doing, that our fire safety goals are being met, but that we're also taking into consideration their landscaping and essentially their privacy needs on the edge of their property as well. Through our vegetation road clearance program, we do treat a minimum of 14 miles every year. This allows us to treat each road on about a 2 to 3 year rotation. We do focus on those roads like you can see in this map. The roads in red are the roads that we treated this past year. We do focus on those roads that are major evacuation routes a little bit more frequently. The second project that we provide, or program that we provide, is that of voluntary defensible space inspections. This is the biggest educational component within the district. It allows us the opportunity to meet one-on-one with every homeowner who is interested in learning more about the programs throughout the district, as well as what they can do individually to ensure that they have defensible space. We meet with them and talk about their existing landscaping, ways that they can make modifications and changes, as well as things that they can do through building construction to make that place that they call home a safer place to live up in our foothills. Once we meet with homeowners and they understand what they need to do to achieve defensible space, often they have the means to do some of the trimming and the clearance that's required, but they lack the ability to dispose of this material. And that's where our chipping services come into play. Chipping services are provided to every resident throughout the district, and it encourages property owners to create that defensible space by providing them a cost-effective way to dispose of that material. This is one of the most popular programs provided throughout the district, as every year we tend to see an increase in the total amount of vegetation that's put out by homeowners that we recycle and reuse and dispose of in our city's high fire foothill areas. In order to promote and to provide this service to every homeowner, we break the district down into 10 chipping areas. They are notified every year in a newsletter that's sent to them in January of their chipping area and the effective schedule. That's sent out to them in a newsletter that provides the schedule along with all of the other services that we provide throughout the district, and essentially the same as this, we in that newsletter give them an update with where we're at with the program so that they can see the services they're being provided with. Homeowners can also find out about this chipping service schedule as well as those other services by visiting a webpage that we operate for the Benefit Assessment District. We have a blog that we continually update that they can check, and we also encourage homeowners to check out the Maine Fire Department Facebook page for current events, as we update that with a lot of the Assessment District activities as well. The last project that we provide within the district for those residents is that of vegetation management. This is one of the most critical services, as it allows firefighters the best ability to get in and control a wildfire that threatens our city. This work occurs in the large open spaces where we have multiple property owners that join together. The work within our vegetation management projects occurs in two different areas. We have the Community Fuels Treatment Network, which you can see on the map up at the top of the map in the orange shade, which ties together areas of the city and county and portions of Montecito. And we also have various vegetation management unit projects, which are identified and scattered throughout the Foothill High Fire Hazard Area Zone. You can see those in the map. You can also see in this map that we have been very effective in the last several years treating work within these vegetation management project areas. Those are highlighted in the following map in those big red areas. The work that we were able to accomplish this past year occurred on two different of those project areas, the Los Tunas Mountain Drive project as well as the Hillcrest Road project area. Through these two projects, we worked with over 100 homeowners to treat nearly 30 acres of work outside of these homeowners' required defensible space areas. And while the goal of vegetation management stays the same and is very consistent, these pictures were all taken from this project work from this past year, and you can see that every single property is very different. This requires us to effectively build those private-public partnerships with those homeowners to not only ensure that our vegetation management goals can be achieved, but that we can ensure that the work that we have done will be maintained for future years through these projects. I have just a couple of quick before and after examples of the work so that you can see some of the work that we have done. This was taken from an edge of a homeowner's defensible space zone, looking out into that area that's unmaintained. You can see a lot of overgrowth. It had been unmaintained. It's a continuous strip of vegetation that would allow for a very aggressive wildfire to move through this area. You can see, if I go back to that previous slide, take a look at that large oak that had been removed that has the big cut in the middle of it. It's the same one in this picture. You can see that we worked with the homeowner. We were able to go in there, thin out a lot of those invasive exotic plant types that had been unmaintained that filled in the area. We left a lot of the existing ground cover, as well as worked with the homeowner to ensure that their needs regarding wildlife protection and privacy were also met. Ooh, this one's pretty dark up there, but where this area is, this is along Mission Ridge across from Sheffield Reservoir. Many of you are probably familiar with this area. It's very dark because there is a lot of dead material, a lot of overgrowth that essentially ran from the edge of Mission Ridge that you can see right here, right up to the homeowner's required defensible space area. Much better, much more drastic after picture where we did the same thing, where we got in there, removed a lot of the ladder fuels, a lot of the dead vegetation, worked with the homeowner to ensure their needs were being met, being right on the edge of a major roadway, and we're able to go in there and treat this through our vegetation management project. We have two project areas ahead of us for the next year. We have the Coyote Circle Westmont project and the Eucalyptus Hill project. As you can see, we're moving farther down through those vegetation management units, which have all been identified and prioritized in our 2004 Wildland Fire Plan. This again is just a more detailed map of those two project areas. You can see once again the vast amount of homeowners that we do work with, and through these projects that we know that these areas are being treated and maintained. So for our total wildland program funding, it's comprised of two different aspects. We have the funding derived from the wildland fire suppression assessment for this next fiscal year, which is $239,133, and we combine that with the estimated general fund appropriations, which is made up of time and monies from the Fire Prevention Bureau, operations time, as well as time and monies from other city departments such as Public Works, Police Department, Water Resources, just to name a few. So combined, for total wildland program funding, we have a total of $439,133. Each year, the per parcel rate that we charge homeowners within the district is set by a required engineer's report. And for the upcoming fiscal year, the rate for a single-family parcel in the foothill zone, which is the lower of those two zones on that first map, would be $73.72. And the per parcel rate for those homeowners in the extreme foothill zone would be $91.41. This is, again, just a breakdown of our budget, and it showcases how we're able to provide those four essential services throughout the district with our total wildland fire suppression assessment district budget of $239,133. With that funding, we're able to continue our road clearance program, continue to provide chipping services, as well as voluntary defensible space inspections, and complete those two vegetation management projects that I had outlined. And with that, I recommend that City Council do adopt the resolution to renew the services outlined in the wildland fire suppression assessment.
Thank you. Great pictures. I don't see any speaker slips, so it's to the council. Mr. House?
Well, Madam Mayor, I just want to appreciate staff for the great work and for the public's participation and coordination, cooperation with this entire effort. And I know there was another part of town that had an opportunity to join in with this kind of an approach, which is over in the Mesa area. Would you just give me a quick briefing? Where does that stand at this point? Is it just off the map, or off of our discussion
It is
now?
as part of this assessment district.
Right.
Councilmember Hausman Schneider, the original assessment district that we set up in 2006, we did on the basis of a survey and then a subsequent vote. So it has to be put to a vote of the taxpayers.
I see. Very good. The issues still remain there, though. I mean,
Yes,
there's still just like the only thing's missing is you're not going in there with the chipping services. You're not going in and helping people clear their properties and make these kinds of improvements.
That's correct.
All right. Something we might want to talk about later. Anyway, thank you very much. And so, Madam Mayor, I move the staff recommendation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Okay, the item 13 is at 4 o'clock, and there's not people here, there's no one here for an interview anyway, so we'll let them have their 20 minutes to get here. And why don't we actually do council member committee assignment reports? Well, not everyone's here, so why don't we take a recess till 4 o'clock, unless, Mr. Armstrong, you think we can do the closed session in 20 minutes?
Actually, I think you can.
Okay, so if the city clerk can read item number 14, we're going to go into closed session, then come back for 4 o'clock for the interviews.
Item number 14, conference with labor negotiator.
Okay, so we will be back here at 4 p.m. for the interviews. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to call the meeting back to order. If you could read item number 13.
Item number 13, interviews for city advisory groups.
Okay. I just see a handful of people here, so instead of going A through Z or Z through A through all the committee titles, commission titles, if you'd just like to, one at a time, come up to the podium and state your name and which commissions or boards you're applying to, and then whatever else you'd like to tell us about your interview. And first of all, thank you for applying. This is the second of 3 different interview periods, and want to thank all of you for considering volunteering your time with the City of Santa Barbara. So doesn't really matter. I just thought it would take longer for me to go through the list than to talk to 5 people or 6. Whoever would like to go first, you're welcome just to come on up to the podium. And Mr. Shore, would you like to start if you're right up front? And thank you. Great. Thank you, Mr. Thank you. There you go. It's right in front of you.
Hi.
And just, again, state your name and which board or commission you're applying to, and then we can...
Mayor Schneider, members of the council, my name is Bob Burnham.
Thank you, Mr. Burnham.
Hi, I'm
And you're
applying for 2 committees, the Transportation Circulation Committee and the Festivals and Events
Okay.
Committee. Does someone have an egg timer to ding me when it's at
You can speak
minute or
for
30
as
seconds?
long as you like, as long as it's not forever. How's that? I mean, you just don't,
I'll try
in
to-
reason, so
I'll try to
you can
be
do
brief.
both at once, but you don't
Okay.
need a specific time.
Okay. I served on the Transportation Committee back in 1980, which really dates me. That committee, one of the things we did was phase in the bikeways on Bath and Castillo streets, which helped cement the really good bike routes that we've had through Santa Barbara and hopefully increase those. I'm not sure when that committee was disbanded, but I understand this current committee was instated in the late 90s. Is that correct? I'm reading something about that. I just retired from 32 years at Santa Barbara MTD. 24 years of that was in dispatch. So I worked closely with city and county traffic divisions and law enforcement. I'm pretty conversant with traffic patterns and problem areas depending on the weekday, the time of year, holiday, weekend traffic, and so on. I'm very familiar with the city as far as streets and traffic patterns within the city. I could always learn a lot more about that. As far as the traffic calming devices, do I understand that includes the bulb outs and things like that, if I'm correct? I think the jury is still out on those. I think they have some advantages, but probably still need some more time as how those play out. I really like roundabouts. I think we need to do more public education with American motorists as far as using those effectively, but I think they're a really cool thing if they're utilized as far as traffic flow. As far as modes of transportation, of course, I'm a total proponent of public transportation, but as far as what is the most viable for the community, the reality is most people would prefer to use their cars, so I would love to talk about more ideas about how to improve vehicular traffic, parking, and things like that, but also promote public transit, cycling, and also to make Santa Barbara even more pedestrian friendly. I think it is in a lot of respects, but that could well be improved. As far as festivals and events, I'm a little less knowledgeable of those, although I have participated in the Summer Concerts in the Park program as a professional musician. I've been a very happy volunteer for 4 years in the Summer Host program, so I love to show off my city in terms of things to do, places to go, things to see. As far as events and festivals, I work with one of the docents down at the Carriage Museum and the Historical Preservation, places like that, and would love to help promote festivals and anything that will bring people into the city and promote music and the arts. and so on. I have had some event planning experience. I used to work with programs on the weekends at La Casa de Maria, and being a professional musician, I've worked with caterers and wedding coordinators in weddings and other events like that. So I think, in summary, that's what I have to tell you. Do you have any questions?
Okay, I think Mr. Hotchkiss has a question for you.
Hi, Mr.
Hi,
Hotchkiss.
Mr. Burnham. How are you?
Yes, sir. Good to see
Nice
you.
to see you again. You were a professional musician?
That professional means you get paid for what you do.
Yeah, and what did you play?
I sing and play guitar. My wife sings and plays piano. We song lead at a church out in Goleta, and we do weddings and occasional programs for service clubs
You
and
had
so
some
on.
Girl Scouts to sing quite a bit, too. I saw you at a Girl Scout event.
Yes, and my friend and I play at farmers markets on Saturday once in a while.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
Did you have any specific thoughts when you said more pedestrian friendly?
Yes, I'll give you an example. We've got so many beautiful trees around downtown, many of which have these nice gratings over the tree wells. Many of them don't. And these tree wells are a real hazard to people coming along, both sighted and blind. I've twisted my ankle in several of these tree wells that dip down quite a bit from the sidewalk. And so little things like gratings over tree wells, maybe repositioning some signposts that are recessed too far in from the curbing, maybe removing some unnecessary clutter along certain streets to make sidewalks more free-flowing for people walking. Simple things like that, I think, could make it more
Thank you very much.
pedestrian-friendly. Thank you. Any other questions?
I don't think so. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burnham. Why don't we just start along this end and come on down the other end?
Hi, I'm Amber Rowley, and I'm applying for the Santa Barbara Youth Council. So, wait, are you going to ask me questions, or...
Why don't you just express to us why you're interested in applying and anything about your background that you'd like to share with us about that pertain to applying for this particular position?
Okay. I think the reason why I'm interested in applying for the Santa Barbara Youth Council is because I want to be able to make, big decisions that can benefit my community. And, I guess things that in my background that will probably help would be, I have a job, so I know how to do time commitment and all that. And I was previously on the Youth Making Change board through the Funds for Santa Barbara, and that's where you're on a board and they kind of make decisions on grant making, and we were able to give $10,000 to separate youth groups that hopefully will use that and benefit from it. And I'm also president of the Speak Against Hate Club on the San Marcos campus, and that kind of focuses on mainly diversity. We run Diversity Week, and we kind of just promote a hate-free environment. And yeah, so I'm also on varsity tennis, so yeah. And I guess the main reason why I want to be on the youth council is, it's a rare opportunity to actually be able to benefit, kind of just impact the community the way they do, because I've read articles about their accomplishments, and I really thought that it'd be a great thing to participate in, so yeah.
Great. That's quite a lot. I don't know when you sleep. I hear that all the time from youth council members. I never know when any of them sleep. Any questions? Ms. Murillo?
Would you repeat your name? You said it really fast.
Oh, sorry, Amber Rowley.
Say it again?
Amber Rowley.
Rowley?
Yeah, Rowley. Yeah.
And when you were on Youth Making Change, is there an experience you had you'd like to share with us, something that you did that was especially gratifying?
Well, this we had one day out of the year where we basically kind of spent the whole day, I think probably around 6 hours of the day, and we just went over everyone, and we kind of just gave everyone an equal amount of time, and it was really gratifying because we were able to come to a conclusion of who we were going to give our grants to. And once we kind of figured all that out, it was, I think, probably the most gratifying moment for me was actually being able to tell them that they were given whatever amount it was, $1,000 or something, because they were really overjoyed about that. And yeah, so.
Oh, giving people money usually makes them happy, yeah. Great. Thank you very much. Any other questions? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Who's next? Mary?
Hello, my name is Mary Johnston, and I'm going to apply for the Board of Commissioners of the Housing Authority, of which I've been a part for the past 7 years. And as background, I currently live in public housing, and I'm a tenant commissioner. And I live on a really nice complex that's between Castillo and Bath, set off from the street, and a really beautiful place. Mission Creek runs through it, and I feel really lucky to live there. And I've been, like I said, I've been on the Board of Commissioners for 7 years now, currently the chair, and so I feel like I have the experience necessary to serve on the board. I'm also familiar with the rules of governing boards and understand the oversight that's needed. And I'm familiar with the different types of housing programs. Public housing is real estate that the Housing Authority owns and rents to eligible applicants, and Section 8 is a program that provides rent subsidies to eligible applicants with rents not to exceed fair market prices. I also have background in construction management. I worked at NASA Johnson Space Center in Houston as a contract manager. And so one of the areas I worked in there was construction contracting. There I became familiar with the bid process, sending out solicitations and receiving bids and awarding contracts, managing them also. I was also part of the cost evaluation team on many solicitations, so I feel like I have experience in analyzing the cost component of a contract. I'm willing and able to spend the time necessary to be on the commission. I'd like to continue my work because I really enjoyed it, and I feel grateful to be part of a team that helps so many people. And I was on the resident council for Monteria Village, another public housing complex that I lived in for several years. While I was there, I was the leader of a Girl Scout troop that was located there. We had several projects to improve the image of the neighborhood. We planted flowers in the complex. And I'm currently working with kids at the AOK after-school program at McKinley School. And we work at Parque de los Niños, which is located on on Rancheria and Montecito. And it's part of the OK program, and so they have some kids from public housing involved there too. And we just kind of took over the garden, which was in a pretty sad state, and redid it, and it's looking really great now. So I believe the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners is working very well. There are persons on the commission who are knowledgeable in many areas, like legal and financial, and their oversight is very valuable to the Housing Authority. And overall, I've really enjoyed my stay on the board and would like to continue it for the next 2 years.
Thank you. Any questions? No. Thank you for your service to date. Your dad, right? Got it. Okay. Come on up.
Afternoon. My name's Dale Azam. I'm here for the Community Development and Human Services Committee. Some of you may remember me. I tried for the Housing Authority Commission last year, and while that went to the incumbent, it might be just as well, because this might be a better place for me to serve, so I thought I would give this a shot. I've lived full-time in Santa Barbara for about a year with my wife, and prior to that, part-time for about 4 years. So my motivation for wanting to participate is really to be able to give back and help people that are in need and be a more full part of the community that we've really grown to love. In return, I think that I have experience that I could really bring to the table as well. Some background on that experience. I'm currently working as a partner in a small apartment investment firm. I've been doing that for about 2 years. That's really just a small piece of my housing experience. Going all the way back in the 80s, I got my master's in urban planning from Harvard University, and then I embarked on a 25-plus year career in commercial real estate finance. And over that period of time, most of the properties that we dealt with were, in fact, residential. Apartments, senior living, student housing, and things of that nature. During the sort of second half of my career, I've also been in positions of management or credit decisioning. So I think, the idea of teamwork on the committee and making decisions in a group setting is very natural to me. In terms of the committee itself, I attended the most recent meeting in in May, and I've reviewed the minutes of the past meetings, and I can see that, it's something I would really love to be a part of. That committee, as you know, has very specific categories. My background is probably best suited to the housing interests category. I do have a very strong interest in some of the social services aspects of what the committee does. So, obviously that's up to you. If you think that I would fit better in that other category, I'd be happy to serve in that capacity as well. I don't come in with any sort of set of pet issues or, a set agenda. I just would like to contribute and, sort of have a collaborative approach to the whole thing. I'd be honored if I could be appointed, and I would be happy to, spend as much time and energy as necessary to do a great job. So.
Thank you. Just to follow up, the other two vacancies, one's on, it's not necessarily just about having interest, but a connection to either a human service agency or a senior community, if you're a senior yourself or connected with a senior type agency. So would you have any connections in that?
In the past I have. Right now I don't have any official connection.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's through the Housing and Urban Development from the federal government that puts those together, not us. So that's why that's there.
Gotcha.
Because a lot of the less and less funding, but some funding come from HUD. That's where all those requirements come from.
Okay.
Mr. Hotchkiss has a question for you.
Well, for a minute, I thought you were working for down in L.A., but you're not, are you?
Well, I started in L.A., and that's where I moved a year ago. I was in L.A., and but now I'm a full-time Santa Barbara resident.
Okay, because that could be a stretch if you were down there. It had to be down there all the time.
No. That's why this is it. We're happy to be here, and this is the focus going forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Megan Burney, and I'm here to apply for the Water Commission. I'm applying for the commission as a member of the general public. I'm not a water technician. You might know me as an energy technician, but water is a new endeavor for me. That said, I am an avid consumer of water, both in everyday drinking and watering plants, but also importantly, I'm a surfer, I stand up paddleboard, and I'm an avid hiker in the front and the back country, so I fully understand our watershed and what it means to have a healthy watershed for the ecosystem, but also for us as residents. I know that the Water Commission serves to advise the council and the staff on issues of policy related to water and wastewater within the city of Santa Barbara, and that they also work on budgetary issues. I attended their last meeting where they discussed issues related to recycled water. I found it very interesting, both because I have a lot to learn, but also because as a society we often don't think about waste, whether it's what we throw down the trash or put down the drain, and really appreciated the commission taking a holistic view of the recycled water issue and offering comments to staff. Found that very, very exciting. And then also, as our society grows, I think it's our responsibility to plan for future uses and reuses of water. So I really, really liked that quite a bit. I believe I'll be a successful member of the Water Commission because of my interest in the topic and my background. I have a master's in public policy, and the degree was rich in economic and policy analysis. I believe it'll help me assess long-term impacts to both issues and policies. I've also spent the last 5 years working at the Community Environmental Council on energy issues, and while there is a nexus between energy and water, I also realize there's quite a few differences. Where I think my experience will help me is that I spend a lot of time understanding projects and rates and tariffs and Public Utilities Commission and general consumption of resources. So I think a lot of those general skills will transfer over well with water. Importantly, I'm also experienced with committees. I serve on quite a few, and I convene quite a few as well. I understand how important it is to have a diverse background of stakeholders, but also how important it is to go into meetings with an open mind, to understand or try to understand the best you can all of the issues and make educated
decisions or give educated recommendations as the situation is necessary. I don't have a specific agenda. I do think that we all have a right to clean water at affordable rates, and that we need to be very effective and efficient using our resources. That said, I feel that the thing I bring most to this commission is just to be a general member of the Santa Barbara community. I think I have a unique perspective, and I would very much enjoy serving on this commission. So thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions? Nope. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Any other? Come on up.
My name is Gabe Dominocello, and I currently sit on the Civil Service Commission and the Living Wage Commission. And the Civil Service Commission meets once a quarter for an hour, and there's almost nothing happens because either the bargaining arm resolves everything or it's resolved all before it hits the commission. I also sit on the Living Wage Commission, which is just a 1 hour meeting every quarter where we shuffle paper around and nothing really gets done. So I am applying for the Water Commission. This is my third time. And when I finished college, I started a well company. It's called the Montecito Well Company. And subsequently, I went into other businesses, and I've been a business owner my entire life after college. And I really understand organization, preparation, and being prepared for things. I also assisted my friend run for a CARP Water Board, and really understood a lot of the issues sitting in the meetings and seeing how that area works. I don't have any pet issues or anything. I don't have a secret water agenda. I'm just interested in the possibility of improving the water system. Do you have any questions?
Great. Thank you. Any questions?
No.
Thank you very much. You okay?
Yeah, no, I have a question. You said you have experience with water well drilling. Is that locally here?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. No longer.
Sorry?
Well, Montecito was in Santa Barbara.
You hit water?
Yeah, it's a huge aquifer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You just want to know if he knows what he's doing?
I talked to you after.
Okay. Okay, I think we have two more we're just coming up and mentioning your name and which board or commission you're applying for and why you're interested. Come on up.
Hi, my name's Jamie Pierce. I'm a landscape architect, and I'm applying for the Single Family Design Review Board. Well, I'm going to go by the questions that they had here,
Sure.
really. My experience, I've been a landscape architect for years. I worked for 2 companies here in Santa Barbara in the city, and I've had my own business for 7 years. I was on the Goleta Design Review Board when Goleta first became a city, which was a great experience. It was new for all of us, and it was all-encompassing. What I think is interesting about this position, the single-family board, is that it's, to me, a subcommittee, which will help me personally feel more confident in that it's focused towards family homes, single-family homes, which I think is really important if you're going to be giving your opinion. Why? I think the reason why I'm applying here is not only to serve the committee, but I think that it's a great opportunity because I think Santa Barbara is an amazing city. It holds a precedence for many other communities and cities in California. I think it's a great opportunity for me to learn, and I also feel strongly that it's important to help to make our clients and our community feel comfortable with the design process and help guide them along and make it a positive experience.
Great. And Mr. Hotchkiss.
This can be pretty time-consuming. You're aware? No problem?
No, well, I'm my own boss, so I'll make the time.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for interviews? Now's your shot. Come on up. I think you're the last one, perhaps.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Jacques Habra, and I'm a local entrepreneur and businessman, and I'm here for the Neighborhood Advisory Council. So I've been serving in civic and community affairs for about 15 years, actually prior to Santa Barbara and Ann Arbor, Michigan. Locally, I sit on the Westmont Foundation Board, the MIT Enterprise Forum, and the Riviera Association. And what I'm really looking to do is get involved and learn more about the city process and extend some of the work that I've done at a civic level right with the city.
Any questions? Nope. Okay. Anything else you want to add? Nope. Okay.
Thank you.
Let me ask you, I think you might be the only entrepreneur, well, I don't know on that, but is there anything particular, have you been to any of the Neighborhood Advisory Council meetings?
I have not.
Okay. No. You might want to review that carefully to really see where you could fit in, what you could add. Thanks very much.
Yeah, as an extension of the Riviera Association, which is very involved in neighborhood activities in the Riviera and how the Riviera connects to the community, Westmont Foundation really looks at how Westmont College will connect with the community as well. I'm hoping to extend some of those experiences, again, at this level and learn a lot.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else for interviews? Okay. Then there's one more meeting of interviews next week. So we'll conclude this for today. Thank you all very much. Any council member committee assignment reports?
Yes.
Mr. Hotchkiss.
Madam Mayor, I sat in for you on 2 occasions. One was the judging art at Phoenix House in Mission Canyon, and just let you know you awarded Larry Iwerks your prize.
Oh, well, he's a good artist.
Yeah, he's a good artist. He was great. And then Saturday, I went to Ortega Park, which was, actually, there weren't that many people there because they were scattered already all around the city. Some 400 folks cleaning up graffiti and distributing handouts, telling folks how they could throw away oversized items. And it was, as always, great fun.
Great. Thank you for
And
taking
Grant was
over
there,
all of
too.
your- Right. I think it was one of the largest community cleanups, over 500 volunteers for the morning. That was great. Ms. Murillo.
Thank you. I was at the Youth Council year-end dinner, so a very painless event yesterday. And I'd like to thank the Jacobsons, Rocky and Greg Jacobson, for sponsoring the delicious Shell-Hooves dinner. And it was just great to have the seniors moving on to college. And I attended the Coastal Housing Partnership Housing Conference on Friday, and it was all about the future of housing, building housing in Santa Barbara. We need some. Apparently, most of the homes are old, and they're owned by older people. So it was some eye-opening information there. And then for funsies, I went to the Brawling Betty's roller derby match this weekend, and if I were younger and more athletic, I would be a Brawling Betty. And I just encourage anybody who hasn't been to go, because it's really amazing. It's a lot of woman power and girl power there. Thank you.
They are a lot of fun. Did they win the bout?
They did not. They were playing the Oakland Outlaws, but they held their own, and they lost well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. White?
How do you follow that one up? Okay, well, like my colleagues, I was attended a portion of the cleanup as well as the housing conference, and good information and good work done. And then I want to report on the Planning Commission's receiving and commenting on the environmental document for the HOV lane portion that's within the city. And the Planning Commission has stretched Caltrans yet some more to come back for more comments in a couple of weeks. primary area of concern was the Cabrillo Boulevard 101 area, and how those bridges are, after having been redone already, are subject to being redone yet again, as those left turn on and off lanes are back as a subject of conversation. So we'll hear more from as far as the Planning Commission comments go in a couple of weeks.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Rouse.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I attended the Government Relations Committee meeting from the downtown organization, and there's a presentation by Officers Keldhove, Casey Butel, and Ed Olson, mostly focusing on the restorative policing projects they're doing. And very, very well done presentation, very upbeat, and very dedicated group of officers. It's an amazing body of work that they do. And we'll be talking about supporting them as we go forth in our budget discussions.
That will be. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, before we adjourn, I just want to express with a heavy heart the passing of former County Supervisor Naomi Schwartz. 20 years ago when I moved here, she was one of the very few women in public office in this area, and a lot has obviously changed in that period of time, but she was someone I personally looked up to. I know the community saw her as a stalwart leader, and not only when it dealt with the coastline and the establishment of the Coastal Commission. She was one of the first commissioners, but also just right up until this past week when she was heading the Gildea Foundation that grants funds for senior programs and services and environmental services, among other things. I guess what I most appreciated about Naomi, if you ever watched her on the dais, she was a masterful diplomat, and to the extent where she could tell you in such a way that she totally disagreed with what you were saying and doing, and yet you thanked her for it. And she just had a very exceptional way of running meetings and speaking up on the dais and in public, and she will be missed. So I will be adjourning in her honor and memory this afternoon. So thank you very much. We're adjourned.
Thank you.